We'll pick up more questions during the discussion of the panel. Our last presentation of the morning before the panel session will be by Dr. James Roth. Jim received his PhD in physical chemistry from the University of Maryland in 1951 and has since then been a proponent for conducting and directing research in catalysis and other areas of the chemical process industry. He is formerly the Chief Corporate Scientist for Research at Air Products and Chemicals in Allentown since 1980. He is now a private consultant, having retired from Air Products. He was with Monsanto for over 20 years, during which made substantial progress in commercializing two large processes, one for the production of acetic acid and the other a heterogeneous catalytic process for the production of linear olefins used to make biodegradable detergents. He is the author of many scientific papers and numerous U.S. and foreign patents. He serves as associate editor for the Journal of Applied Catalysis and on a number of editorial boards, including Catalysis Reviews and Catalysis Today. He is a member of the National Academy of Engineering, a winner of the 1975 D.B. Murphy Award from the American Chemical Society, a recipient also of the J. Crocus Award from the Department of Chemistry at Johns Hopkins, the 1988 Perkin Medal winner from the Society of the Chemical Industry, and in 1991 he received this Society's Goodrich Award. Today he will talk to us on the evolving nature of industrial catalysis.
Thank you, gentlemen, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I very much appreciate the opportunity to participate in this symposium and apologize somewhat for the repetition of some material that appeared in my Goodrich Award address, but I found it useful in my mind, at least in order to develop some of the comments, thoughts, and observations that I'll be making this morning. Now, in the past few years, several well-documented accounts have been given describing the financial, economic, and societal impact of industrial catalysis and its criticality to our current quality of life. It ranks at or near the top amongst critical technologies of modern society. In view of this, it's reasonable to ponder the future. Is it likely that significant further growth will occur, and if so, what will be the important breakthroughs in industrial catalysis during the next 20 to 30 years? Where and how will these breakthroughs be created? And then finally, in the context of this particular symposium, will interactions between the academic, industrial, and government sectors really be important and relevant to the advances in industrial catalysis? And if so, what will be the nature of these interactions? I'll try briefly to address these questions. Generally, most technologies experience an evolutionary cycle that resembles an S-curve. This curve has been described and discussed extensively by Richard Foster and others, and recently has been some attempts have been made to apply it to the field of catalysis. Initially, progress is slow until a significant lead to a potentially useful application is found. Then, the development proceeds rapidly, often embracing one or more important incremental advances. However, eventually, the technology evolution slows down as it becomes more difficult and very expensive to make significant further progress. At this point, the technology has reached a state of maturity and diminishing returns, and there's little incentive for investing new research efforts and money with a perspective of very modest further improvements. The pattern of major new developments in industrial catalysis between 1930 and about 1975 followed such an S-curve, particularly for processes for making large volume commodity chemicals. When a particular technology has reached or neared its limits of technical progress, the pathway to further progress is by technology discontinuity, a shift to an entirely new and different knowledge base. Examples of these are the shift from vacuum tubes to semiconductors, or in the case of industrial catalysis, the shift from acetylene to ethylene as the feedstock for making vinyl monomers. In our figure here, we see a discontinuity being represented by a pair of S-curves with a gap between them constituting a displacement change in which one technology replaces another. It's been reported that technology leadership changes hands in about 70% of the cases when discontinuities are created. Is industrial catalysis now a relatively mature technology, a candidate for changes in leadership? This depends, of course, on a number of factors. Are there truly forces in existence to motivate such changes, and are such changes desirable and technically feasible, and who will pursue and create them? The strongest force driving new catalytic technology today is that of increasing environmental pressures. A new generation of chemical processes is desired that produces only the desired product and very little else. In addition, there are major programs within DOE, for example, aimed at reducing the energy intensity of chemical processes. Finally, there is still the old-fashioned driving force of economics, which prompts the shift of chemical processes, in some cases, to lower-cost feedstocks. But each of these driving forces translate ultimately into a need for more selective processes, which in turn will demand dramatically new, more selective catalysis. It's been my contention for some time now that virtually all of the major products made by the chemical industry employ rather mature technology and are candidates for new catalysis of the type requiring technology breakthroughs. Collectively, these might be viewed as the unsolved problems of industrial catalysis. Time does not permit us to identify or review a comprehensive list of these, but let's at least review an illustrative list of the unsolved problems of industrial catalysis as we consider the following 10 illustrative needs. First, I have a low-temperature catalyst for the oxidation of SO2 and SO3 to make sulfuric acid, the largest volume chemical produced in the United States. Current catalysts operate around 500 degrees centigrade, where equilibrium constraints exist, leading to unacceptably high concentrations of unconverted SO2. This requires multiple stage reactors and very high capital. A low-temperature catalyst could help control SO2 emissions and improve economics. What is needed here is not an incremental improvement in the existing catalyst, but dramatically new, lower-temperature catalysis. Second example is a novel oxidation catalyst for the selective oxidation of methane to methanol. No such catalyst exists, and when developed, will constitute one of the most important advances in chemistry. Most of the past research in this area has focused on high-temperature oxidation catalysts. My personal biases prompt me to believe that a successful catalyst will likely be one that probably involves low-temperature oxidation in the liquid phase. Third example, a practical catalyst of facile decomposition of nitric oxide to nitrogen and oxygen, and I might add in the presence of water and CO2. It's well known that NOx contributes both to acid rain and photochemical smog, and is one of our most undesirable atmospheric pollutants. Yet it is only in the past few years that significant progress has been made with metal-containing zeolites as NO decomposition catalysts. However, the materials so far developed do not appear to perform well in the presence of excess oxygen and water. Thus, the prize remains. The problem is yet unsolved. Number 4, let's consider high conversion, high selectivity catalysts for the production of ethylene. Propylene and styrene, all from their respective alkanes. Ethylene, for the chemical industry's most important feedstock. 40% of all the organic chemical production is based on it. Yet it is produced currently by a thermal cracking process that generates many byproducts and is quite capital and energy intensive. There's a very strong incentive to develop a new selective route to ethylene by a number of possible pathways: selective dehydrogenation, perhaps using membrane reactor catalysis, or possibly by the selective oxidative coupling of methane. Membrane reactor dehydrogenation could also be useful for the improved production of propylene or styrene. One of the keys to such membrane catalysis may be the development of new materials featuring very high hydrogen transport rates. Well, let's move on now. Number 5 on my list is a selective catalyst for the oxidative coupling of methanol to ethylene glycol. This would shift the feedstock base from ethylene to methanol. Next, I have a selective catalyst for producing phenol by the direct oxidation benzene, using molecular oxygen instead of the indirect cumene-based process which is in use worldwide now. Next, I would propose efficient catalyst for the selective direct synthesis of hydrogen peroxide from hydrogen and oxygen, but at mild reaction conditions. Then I would propose low-temperature selective oxidation catalyst for the epoxidation of propylene and ethylene by molecular oxygen. Next on the list is the synthesis of aromatic amines by a direct interaction of aromatics with ammonia. Current processes are quite indirect and involve first ammonia oxidation to nitric acid, then aromatic nitration with sulfuric acid as a catalyst, leaving byproduct mineral acids, and then requiring nitro reduction with hydrogen. Multi-step process. Here also, membrane reactor catalysis could provide an interesting approach to direct animation of aromatics. The key here also may be the creation and use of new materials that afford selective facile hydrogen transport. And the last on my list is the anti-Markovnikov addition of water or ammonia to olefins to synthesize directly in one step primary alcohols or amines. The DuPont adiponitrile synthesis from butadiene appears to involve anti-Markovnikov addition of HCN to butadiene. Present industrial processes for alcohols and amines involve multiple steps with significant losses or limitations as respects environment, energy, or capital intensity and economics. Work on these 10 unsolved problems of industrial catalysis alone could easily command the attention of hordes of catalytic scientists throughout the world. It seems plausible to project that the evolution of most fields of science and corresponding technology, including catalysis, pursued a somewhat similar path in a generic sense. At the beginning, the search for new knowledge was largely a non-directed one, marked by explorations that were relatively simple to pursue and generating results that were relatively simple to apply. This embryonic stage is in fact the golden era for non-directed basic research, comprising a search for new knowledge without regard to its application. Initially, applications are abundant and can readily be linked to results of basic research. Then the science and technology pass through several stages of increasing complexity as a hierarchy of knowledge and applications develop and maturity sets in. Industrial catalysis appears to presently be somewhat stuck in a state of apparent maturity. The number of breakthrough advances in industrial catalysis has decreased sharply in the past 10 to 15 years. The contributions of non-directed basic research to major industrial innovations are very few. As I have tried to illustrate, there are countless challenges, the unsolved problems of catalysis. However, there are relatively few people working on these problems. Conquering each or any of them will require a dramatic advance, a discontinuity in catalytic chemistry. And discontinuity advances are much more difficult to achieve and will, in most cases, require long, persistent investments in high-risk research. They will eventually be pursued, however, because the needs will become increasingly recognized and because, as in almost every field of human endeavor, there are some among us who will strive to conquer the highest peaks. The desired discontinuity results will not flow as logical, readily designed extensions of current catalytic knowledge. They will not flow from the knowledge gained by exploratory research aimed at elucidating existing catalytic systems. Yet this is the major preoccupation of current academic basic research in catalysis. Experience has shown that breakthroughs in industrial catalysis in the past 20 years have rarely emanated from academic basic research. Yet this was not nearly so in the earlier stages of catalytic science and technology. In the past few months, CNN News in particular has published several letters that debate the value to society of basic research versus applied research in academia. One wonders whether the more relevant debate is not that of non-directed versus directed basic research from universities. Non-directed basic research was appropriate and certainly productive for society several decades ago when the fields of chemistry and catalysis were in that embryonic state. But as in so many other areas of our lives, the world's changed dramatically and we are challenged to seek and find new ways. We should not cling to the policies and strategies that worked before, but now invite, if not beg, for change. If we accept the contention that these unsolved problems of catalysis are now important and need solutions, how will we obtain the solutions? For at least 10 to 15 years now, catalytic research, likes it or not, or agrees with it or not, industry will not perform the research needed to generate catalytic process discontinuities. Academic research, on the other hand, is of a longer term, but has tended to concentrate on explanatory research of existing catalytic systems and existing catalytic chemistry. The government so far has been a relatively modest factor in performing research per se, but is a significant factor in funding basic research in catalysis at universities. One of the new NSF programs on environmentally benign chemical synthesis was described just a few minutes ago by Dr. McGee. I strongly applaud this new initiative by NSF and feel that it constitutes an excellent example of an effort to stimulate and motivate directed basic research, having great national and societal benefit potential. I hope this program is strongly supported and appears to be so, is expanded and it appears to be so, and captures the interest and participation of leading catalytic scientists in U.S. universities. Last year, I had the privilege to serve as a member of the panel that reviewed and rated the first round of proposals submitted to NSF. Notwithstanding the fact that it was the first round, I was quite frankly somewhat disappointed that the proposals as a whole did not seem to address the highest priority and most strategic challenges for new process needs. I believe that in most cases, academic scientists and even the government funding agencies are not well informed as to what are the most important and most strategic needs and challenges for new processes in terms of environmental issues, energy intensity, and capital intensity. Recently, there's been an increasing desire and effort by government agencies and government laboratories to support the U.S. chemical industry. As one who has spent his entire career in the industry and somewhat as a consultant to some government organizations, I see that there's a great need for industry to help inform and guide government agencies and also university researchers as to what are the most important needs and challenges for new catalytic processes. This could include a list of the major unsolved problems of catalysis with accompanying information about the environmental, energy, and capital intensity of the existing process. If we are going to spend money supporting university research on environmentally benign processes or on new processes that reduce energy consumption, let us work on the most important ones, the ones with the greatest potential impact. At the moment, there does not appear to be a coherent strategy or action plan for creating the next generation of industrial catalysis in the United States. Whereas, in retrospect, it appears that none was needed in the past, I think this is no longer the case. Catalysis research has expanded greatly and is being pursued in many countries as a high priority endeavor. We heard some indications of that earlier this morning. National programs in catalysis are underway in several countries and will certainly be embraced by others. A National Institute of Catalysis in the United States was proposed in the past. In fact, it was proposed by the Catalysis Society, but it was never launched. I believe that it is appropriate to reconsider such an organization now. The long preeminent position of the United States in catalysis, hence the production of chemicals, which is very dependent on catalysis, being challenged by the need for a new generation of more selective processes. We need to create and operate a highly interactive program that embraces the university, industry, and government sectors. I'd like to, as a trial balloon, I'd like to throw out a potential scenario for getting our acts together, and it could be along the following lines. One, create a National Institute of Catalysis that will plan, organize, and oversee a national catalysis program aimed at high priority needs and opportunities. This institute would not be a center of excellence in itself. It would not be a local or regional center, but would be structured to fund researchers anywhere in the United States. Have industry take the lead in creating a guidebook that identifies, describes, and ranks the major unsolved problems in next generation catalysis. Have government agencies, NSF, DOE, EPA, and others, create a research fund to support directed basic research in universities aimed at creating the intellectual underpinnings of solutions for important unsolved problems in catalysis. Presumably, this fund would be administered by this new National Institute of Catalysis. Obtain funding contributions from industrial sponsors who would share in non-exclusive patent rights to any patents that might be generated. Have proposal reviews and progress reviews conducted by groups having strong representation from each of the university, industry, and government sectors. In closing, I'd like to emphasize that the proposal to create the National Institute of Catalysis is not prompted by an attempt to emulate anyone else, for example, the Dutch, but rather out of a perceived vital need. A new organizational structure seems to be needed to create and oversee the interactional program that's required to address the changing demands of catalytic technology and its service to the nation and society. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can take one or two questions at this point, if there are some that want to raise. I'm surprised that didn't generate it. All right, Ken.
Jim, you might want to clarify your use of the word institute there. I mean, when you think of the National Health Institutes and things like that, you think of a huge structure with bricks and mortar and doing all the research at some large government lab or something. Is that what you had in mind with the use of the word institute?
No,
or more like
I'm the word institute is the right title to use or not. I think we need to create a national organization which might have the title institute, which would not be doing research per se, but would play a very proactive role in the creation, organizational, and oversight of the national effort in catalysis. And that might conceivably consist of a small staff of people. But being the operational arm of a board of directors.
I might point out that this kind of an idea is not unheard of and already exists at the National Science Foundation. We have established, for example, an Institute of Mechanics and Materials at the University of California, La Jolla. We have an announcement that will hit the street in a week or two to establish an Institute of Agile Manufacturing. So the kind of thing that you're talking about is being done. It makes good sense.
Well, my concern is that organizations, for example, like the Catalysis Society, consist of people who are fully occupied with earning a living and working for their respective organizations, and there is no